Okay, so we need a shorter version. Okay, well, the city's going to bring it.
This is Colonel David Sanders.
Gentlemen, would you please take your seats? We're about to begin the commemorative ceremony for those buried here in Riverside Cemetery who fought in the Battle of Plattsburgh, September the 11th, 1814. Cards in place. To begin our program this afternoon, the opening music will be by the Lakeside Chorale.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have two numbers for you this evening. The first is our national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. The second one, another patriotic song, Hail Columbia.
Suzanne.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gay.
I'd like now to call on Reverend Paul Heller for our opening prayer.
Let us pray. Holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty, who are and wast and art to come, we who are unworthy of the least of all thy mercies humbly present ourselves in thy presence. We come to thee, our Creator and Redeemer, with homage, adoration, and praise. Enable us, O Lord, by thy good Spirit, to attend to the holy duties to which thou art calling us at this time, without distraction of mind and with reverence and godly fear. We commend to thy keeping all those who do serve our country by sea and land. Stretch forth, we pray thee, thine almighty arm to strengthen and protect them in every peril. Shelter them in the day of battle, and in time of peace keep them safe from all evil. Endue them ever with loyalty and courage, and grant that in all things they may serve as seeing thee, who art invisible. We beseech thee ever to guide our nation in the way of thy truth and peace, so that we may never fail in the blessing which thou hast promised to that people whose God is the Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. It was a very special blessing because the Reverend did his research, and that is a blessing from the time of this battle. I'd like to introduce to you all the special people that have come here today to help us commemorate the Battle of Plattsburgh and indeed the warriors who fell in it. First of all, on the right, my right, is Monsieur Alain Lepant, who is representing Monsieur Claude Beauchamp, who is a member of Parliament of Canada. We have the Right Honorable Chris Ortloff here today, who's truly been an inspiration for this entire weekend. Thank you so much for being here. All the way from London, England, we have the direct descendant of Sir George Prevost, the Governor General and Lieutenant General of the British Army, who fought this battle. We have Sir Christopher Prevost here today, and his wife, Lady Prevost. Representing Clyde Rabideau, the Mayor of Plattsburgh, we have the Deputy Mayor, Mr. Jack Stewart. In addition to that, we have other descendants who have arrived for this special weekend. Members of the McDonough family. Thomas McDonough Russell is here, as well as others. We're very happy to have them all here today to honor this battle. Representing the soldiers and the sailors who fought in this battle, we have the veterans groups. First of all, the Marine Corps League in the North Country. Secondly, the American Military Retirees represent all services. And thirdly, we have the North Country Vietnam Veterans Association representing those who fought so bravely in a recent war. The ones that we can't see today are the ones we're here to honor. Fighting men from both countries. And for those of you who don't know, there were also women involved in this battle on both sides that were here, not buried in the cemetery, but indeed did perish during the battle. One was buried in Plattsburgh Bay. Lieutenant Colonel Wellington was actually a captain. He had done such a great job in the Peninsular War in Spain for England, and his regiment, the 3rd East Kent Buffs, a very, very famous regiment, that he'd been promoted to Major Brevet. That means without pay. And just before this battle, they promoted him again to Lieutenant Colonel Brevet, without pay. And he was the commanding officer of the 3rd Buffs, the East Kent Regiment, the lead troops that came down the Beekmantown Road. And in the very first engagement with Major Wool and his 200 regulars, and Aiken's volunteers, and we do have a descendant of Aiken's volunteers here today. Colonel Wellington was the first man to fall. He was shot by Samuel Terry from Peru, New York, a militia. In addition to that, on his right and left fell also Ensign Chapman and Lieutenant Kingsbury, in addition to 12 other English soldiers that died in the very first skirmish. This did not slow the British. They never came out of column. They were a great veteran organization of 8 years of war, and they marched on, and the Americans had to withdraw in front of them. On board ship in the bay, Peter Gamble, who is buried here, was the first lieutenant on board the Saratoga, and Gamble was sighting a gun, leaning over one of these big carronades, about to fire, when an English cannonball came right through the side, hit the gun, split the coin, which is a device to level the gun, which is made of wood, a large wooden wedge, which sliced him in half, and died instantly on the deck. Peter Gamble was buried in front of him. Likewise, the American pilot, Joseph Barron, was a pilot aboard the Saratoga, and when Saratoga, late in the battle, had lost all of her guns on one side and was truly defeated, the battle was over, McDonough was able to revolve the ship in place by pulling in the anchors, and during that process he sent all of his men below that weren't needed to pull those anchors. One that couldn't go below was Joseph Barron, and he was killed during that last bit of action. He too is buried here. And lastly, I'd like to mention someone that history has truly forgotten, and that is Captain Purchase, British officer of the 76th Regiment of British Foot, who indeed was a member of Power's brigade as they crossed the Saranac River at Pike's Cantonment. And as they moved south and pushed the Vermont militia back and allowed Robinson to come in behind and attack the American lines from the back, just before the battle was over, Robinson was called to return by General Prevost because the lake battle had been lost and the army was withdrawn, indeed, from the American side of the river. Like in all armies, of all times, somebody doesn't get the word. Robinson Brigade pulled back, the other brigade pulled back as well, and one company didn't get the word, and that was Captain Purchase's. He continued to fight the Vermont militia all the way back on the Salmon River, about 5 miles from the original point, and his entire company was captured, and in an effort to break free, Purchase was shot and killed. Captain Purchase is buried here in front of me as well. So those are the other people who are here still today in spirit at this commemorative time, both British and American, who gave their last bit of effort for their country, doing the best they could. I would now like to call on the representative of the mayor, Mr. Jack Stewart, to say a few words.
Members of the clergy, Battle of Plattsburgh Commission, distinguished guests and friends. The men we honor here this evening were 184 years ago in the final stages of preparation for the Battle of Plattsburgh. Fate had brought them to this small village from local and distant places far removed from this small border community. The battle would be the last naval engagement between England and the United States. On the morning of September 11th, 1814, they met on the lake and in the village on that field of battle. They entered that battle as all soldiers, young men with high hopes and strong beliefs in the causes that they were defending. They believed in one's duty to their country and the responsibilities of citizenship in defending those ideals. These men made the supreme sacrifice to maintain those ideals. During those 2.5 hours of battle, these officers and many in their commands would lose their lives. The carnage and the destruction was great on both sides. 6 American officers and 9 British officers are buried on this hollow ground. On the 13th of September, bodies of the officers of the fleet who had fallen in the battle were transferred to boats by their crew members. The boats then moved to the British fleet, and they transferred the British officers to their boats. And together, the former enemies were taken to the shore, where citizens and military personnel met and joined them in a solemn procession to this village that brought them to this quiet spot in this cemetery. 184 years have passed, and we, the citizens of Plattsburgh and the descendants, have not forgotten the sacrifice that was made. They rest here today, together, not as enemies, but as respected heroes who gave their last so we could have a better life. These men did what they were asked, and today we once again honor them and celebrate that historic battle that they fought. The friendships of our nations have grown. They were enemies in war, and now honored equally in death for the principles that they believed and the sacrifice of their lives. We thank them and remember them as heroes who died with honor, defending their beliefs. We in Plattsburgh shall never forget what happened in our city on September 11, 1814. We can be proud that we have continued these remembrances and the new friendships that we have developed. What better way to honor these men who so many years ago gave their lives for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I'd like to ask the representative from Canada, Monsieur Alan LaPlante, to please come forward and say his remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad to be here today to represent Mr. Claude Bachin, the Member of Parliament of St. John in Ottawa, in Canada, to memorize the Battle of Plattsburgh in 1814. Mr. Bachin regrets not to be here today. We have a lot of interest in historical, and specifically in military historical. Our region around the Richelieu River and your region around the Lake Champlain have a lot of common. So we hope that we're going to have a nice weekend, and we hope that our relationship is going to keep growing up. Thanks a lot.
Merci, Monsieur LaPlante. The central grave here in this cluster, this small cluster of so many men who fought in the battle, is that of Captain Downey. Captain Downey was a Royal Naval officer who joined the Navy at a young age, the son of a minister in County Ross, Ireland. He served in the wars against Napoleon and captained a frigate on the Great Lakes before he was given the command of the British flotilla here on Lake Champlain just 2 weeks before the battle. During the battle, 15 minutes after it began, Captain Downey, again sighting a gun, leaning over a gun, about to fire, when an American cannonball came through the side of the ship, struck the muzzle of the gun, tore the 1,500-pound steel cannon out of the slide, and Captain Downey caught it in his arm. And it took him to the deck. He was killed instantly. His watch stopped at the second of his death. The cannon today is in front of McDonough Hall at the United States Naval Academy. And if you go there, you can see where the cannonball struck the muzzle. I would like to call on Sir Christopher Prevost to please make remarks on behalf of the British soldiers and sailors who fought here in 1814. Sir Christopher.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is my third visit to Plattsburgh. The first was on a quest to retrace the footsteps of my ancestor, Sir George Prevost. Some of you may think this ironic, an Englishman coming to America looking for his roots. Sir George, in fact, was not the first of my ancestors to come to North America. His father, General Augustin Prevost, was here serving under General Wolfe in 1759, and later as commander of the British Army in the South during the War of Independence. When the invitation to attend this service arrived from Mayor Rabideau, it started me thinking, what would Sir George and the other officers and men from both sides think about today's ceremony? I have no doubt they would all be pleased to know that we still remember them and honour them after all this time. What would they say now, though, seeing representatives from the United States, Canada and Great Britain standing here side by side as strong allies? I'm sure it would please Sir George. It seems that the armed forces have played an important part in Plattsburgh's history. Army, Navy, and until recently the Air Force have all been stationed here at one time or another. Now, with a new century around the corner, Plattsburgh is looking to its future. I wish it well in its vigorous endeavours to encourage tourism into this area. You have a lot going for you. Battle areas, the lake, and of course the beautiful scenery. I certainly will do all I can to promote this region whenever possible. On a personal note, I would add that it is to the younger generation that all communities look for their future, and I feel strongly that our children should be proud of the exploits of their forebears. Encourage a feeling of pride in the younger generation for what this area has achieved in the past, and they will be proud to proclaim their own achievements as sons and daughters of Plattsburgh. If I can help in any way towards you meeting your aims, please let me know. I thank the Mayor for asking my wife and I to attend these celebrations, and I wish you all well. Thank you very much.
Put. Reserve. Huh. Order. Huh. Hey. I'd like to conclude the ceremony with a blessing from our Rabbi, Rena Judd. Rabbi Judd.
Rise. Dear God, we ask for a moment of your time to remember and bless the souls of those who sanctified this soil with the holiness of their lives. May their dedication and selflessness forever inspire us to live by values and morals which will forever enhance our communities, our countries, and our world. May it be your will, O God, to bless us and the people we love with the bounty of health, harmony, and friendship, and the gift of peace. in gratitude for your everlasting presence in our lives and our world. We thank you. Amen.
Thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the troops of both countries and our Canadian volunteers, voltigeurs, and chasseurs, and Mirons Swiss, who fought in this battle in 1814. Thank you.
It's been an interesting thing.
September 11th, 1998, 184 years after the Battle of Plattsburgh, on a crisp 48-degree day. Shirley Kester, how are you doing?
Great. I'm just relieved that it's here. The day is here, and we're going to do it.
Shirley of the Clinton County Historical Association says, I'm a little punchy because there's been a lot going on leading up till today, and it wasn't until, yesterday morning that we've got the final permission to raise this anchor today of the Confiance.
That's absolutely right. The events took a little strange turn a little over a week ago. It appeared that the British did own the anchor, after all, still. So yesterday morning I was driving into the museum and deciding that I would have to call everybody and say, sorry folks, we're not going to do that this week. Get to work, and I got a communication from Art Cohn from the Maritime Museum, who told me that the word had come from the British government that we were indeed going to be able to do it. They were going to give it to us, and actually the wording is that they are going to give it to the town. So they're not giving it to the nation, or maybe not to the state, although the state does have jurisdiction over this sort of thing, but give it so that the people can see it locally. With the proviso is that it be displayed for local viewing. Not sold, not given away, but installed locally.
Well, I think we ought to explain the process to people now that we're standing here. First of all, I want you to introduce me to this gentleman standing next to you.
Standing next to me is Gary Chartrand. Gary appeared at the museum, I think 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
About 3 weeks
Three
ago.
weeks ago, or more maybe.
3 or 4 weeks ago.
And I'll let Gary tell his story, because he came up with a very interesting collection of newspapers.
Gary's the oldest paper boy here today.
The oldest paper boy. I've been collecting historical newspapers for about 30 years, and I wanted to find something on the Battle of Lake Champlain and the Battle of Plattsburgh, and I ran across a collector in Paxton, Maryland, so I bought them from him, and then I put them in frames, and they're in the Historical Museum here in Plattsburgh right now on loan.
Isn't that terrific? And we made some copies of this very special newspaper today that I want to show our viewers. This is the Charleston Courier.
Right.
From October 4th, 1814. It took a while for the news to get out, didn't it, Gary?
It took about 3 or 4 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, for the news to travel from Plattsburgh to Charleston.
Okay. I want to open this paper in the back end, and so perhaps we can get a sight. What are we looking at here? What is it? What's it all
Well,
about?
right there you're looking at another part of the paper, but if you turn it around, you'll see I think it's the Battle of Lake Champlain on there.
Yes, it is.
The Battle of Lake Champlain, if you turn it around on the other side.
All right, let me flip it around.
Yeah.
Right on the front side.
They didn't have no pictures in them days. They had fine print.
Yeah, there weren't too. The photography hadn't been really perfected.
And the paper will last 1,000 years if you take care of it, because it's made out of a rag content. Not like the papers they make today where they're so thin, but them papers they made way back will last a long time.
Now, what are we planning to do, Shirley, with these papers today?
Well, I have about 45 Brownie Scouts coming to the museum tomorrow, and on Sunday, Cadet Scouts. There will be some Boy Scouts also, and little brothers of the Girl Scouts. And they're going to be selling these newspapers as souvenirs of the weekend, courtesy of Gary. He's allowed me to copy this and have it reproduced at the Penny Saver here in Plattsburgh. It has 8 pages, and it's going to be sold for $2.
What a neat keepsake. What a wonderful idea, because this brings the past right to the present, doesn't it?
Exactly. And it's our only real tangible evidence. We can talk all we want to, and we can read everything we want, but you can't really get your hands on the original documents very easily, so we're indebted to Gary.
This program is called Our Little Corner, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Shirley is a little from way back when. From where?
Geneseo. It's Livingston County down near Rochester.
Oh, see?
And it appears we may have a common ancestor.
I'm almost positive. Have you ever been back to Ireland and Scotland?
No, I haven't.
Neither have I.
Well, I think we should go.
I think we should do our thing to go and trace those roots and find out that they might actually come together.
Wouldn't that be great fun?
That would be wonderful. Where were you 2 years ago when this anchor was first raised?
At that point in time, I was serving on the board of directors of the Clinton County Historical Association. I regret to say I didn't see the anchor, so I'm looking forward to today.
Oh, I really should have brought the photographs. My wife and I, of course, when Frank called us and told us it was up, we came flying down here, almost doing the same thing you did this morning on the way.
Ooh, dear, let's not talk about that.
But we got down here and we got some of the very first photographs of it, and we were proud to do that. For the benefit of our viewers who may have been living in a cocoon somewhere, this is the anchor from the British flagship Confiance, which was, played a major role in this battle.
It certainly did. The Confiance was a very large frigate, a British frigate. It sailed down from Ile aux Noix, 10 miles north of the border, into the lake. Captain McDonough, or Commodore McDonough's fleet was anchored just off the bay where we're standing, hidden behind Cumberland Head. When the British fleet came down and rounded the head, they met the well-anchored boats of McDonough. Well-anchored is important to know because you can't fire from a moving deck of a boat, so he definitely had the advantage. The British regular troops were on shore. McDonough was firing on shore, and many of the early houses in Plattsburgh were lost during that conflict because they fired hot shot into them and burned them. Curiously enough, when you read some of the actual reports of the time, the citizens weren't particularly bitter about that because they were so anxious to, beat the enemy and defend their soil that they were actually almost gracious about their house being burned, if you can believe it. It's very interesting to read the first-hand reports.
That's fascinating. And it happened right about this time. The reason we're here and the reason we arrived shortly after 7 in the morning, because this battle took place in the morning 184 years ago. And we want to time the raising of the anchor. And by the way, a couple of divers who raised the anchor in the first place are going down into those cool waters of Lake Champlain. We want to get it up about this time it was shot off, don't we?
Yes, we certainly do. The British fleet entered the lake at 5:40 in the morning, and it was reported that they had entered the lake. The Confiance was a very large ship. It was actually constructed in Ile aux Noix. And when it was sighted, the news came down here rather quickly. And the actual battle began at 8:40 in the morning, the exact time that we're scheduled the anchor is scheduled to break the surface of the water.
This is just such a neat experience for me because we've known about this Battle of Plattsburgh ever since we moved here. We have tried as individuals and as groups to get our local populace excited about the history of the Plattsburgh, and it hasn't always been an easy thing, Shirley, has it?
Well, let me tell you and I'm a newcomer to the area, as we've just discussed, but let me tell you what I wrote in my application, and the application came from the Clinton County Historical Association. I have the permit in my hand here, and that's why I had this little mishap this morning coming in. What occurs to me is that there are such treasures here. There's such a vast richness of history. There are many of the people who are actually descended from the people who were directly involved in this conflict. But yet there's an undercurrent of appreciation, but not particularly people stepping up and saying and being proud of their history. So what I wrote in my application is that I project that this anchor will be a coalescing factor for that pride and that history.
That's terrific. Let's tell people what's going to happen to it. First of all, we're going to tow it in,
Exactly.
and it'll be on display for a few hours.
It's going to be on display here in the harbor, just in front of the Naked Turtle, actually, the restaurant. Frank Pabst is the fellow who's going to be, his barge is out there already in preparation for the raising. Ken and Bill Van Stockham are the divers who originally found the anchor. Two conservators from the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum are on hand to assure that proper care is given to the raising, because what we hope for is that we won't disturb the paint. The paint is intact.
Oh, yes.
And it has to be very carefully secured on the deck of the barge, and then at that point, which should be probably somewhere around 10 o'clock this morning, it will be towed into the harbor here for public viewing, and it'll be in the harbor for 3 hours.
Ultimately, it'll be back in town once it's preserved by the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum.
Right. It goes from here today, at the end of today, down to the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum at Basin Harbor, Vermont. It will undergo approximately 2 years of conservation efforts. There are a lot of complicated things that have to be done to it, because it's comprised of wood and iron, and after that period of time, when it's fully conserved and able to withstand the climate, it'll be brought back here, and the plan right now is that it will be installed in the antechamber of the rotunda at City Hall. Mayor Rabideau is very excited about that, as are we all, and we've all worked together for this process. There are many people involved. It's a complicated procedure to do this.
Well, you know, you're a newcomer, and I've been around here for a while, and this whole thing is reminiscent of some activity we had a few years ago when I was out with a tape recorder broadcasting on the radio, the raising of some cannon off the bottom of Lake Champlain, off Cliff Haven, and there raged a controversy that went on for decades. Ultimately, one of those cannon was displayed up there in the rotunda of City Hall. I hope the conditions will be much more favorable this time around, because I think you've done your homework.
I certainly have. I have to say, I've done everything I can. There are others involved. A representative of New York State will also be on hand today on the barge. His name is Phil Lord Jr. He's from the New York State